नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च। श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णकरुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंश कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय पादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारणे पाश्चात्य देशधारिणी मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानंद माधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरं। हरि ओम तत्सत्। हरे कृष्णा। So welcome to everyone. And I'm grateful for the opportunity that you all are giving me to discuss this wonderful Srimad Bhagavad. In that way, I'm able to purify myself and try to absorb my consciousness in this topmost of Vedic literatures. Bhagavatam is so sweet, so wonderful. No other literature compares. This literature is Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam. What is the definition of Bhagavat? Bhagavat is Amala Puran. Amal means no tinge of material contamination. So what does it mean? Other Puranas are materially contaminated. Contaminated not in the sense that there is some nonsense. All scriptures and all Puranas are holy, but contaminated from the perspective of mixture of the three modes. Because different Puranas are targeted for different audiences, the teachings and the instructions are also according to the target audience. Correct? Yeah. If you're trying to sell something, you will create the content based on your target audience. Correct? You will fine tune, because if you don't fine tune it, there'll be no appeal. So if you're targeting a particular kind of audience who are extremely materialistic, and you say, please come and do this, then you will find great satisfaction in the depth of your heart. Yeah. If you talk about something which is nice for the tongue, which is about some nice enjoyment, this life or the afterlife, enjoyment means sensual enjoyment, and then they can relate to it because they're situated in that mode. Otherwise, there'll not be any appeal. So Bhagavatam is Amala Puranam and is Vaishnavanam Priyam. It is dear to the Vaishnavas, to the devotees. So the fact that you all are enthusiastic to hear, that means you are devotees. You're all Vaishnavas, because It requires great fortune and great blessings to develop the faith and some attraction, even if it is a little bit, to hear this literature. And we cannot describe enough the glory of hearing and discussing the Srimad Bhagavad. So, my congratulations to all of you, and our combined gratitude to our spiritual teachers and Srila Prabhupada and Acharyas and Vyasdev, and finally the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Hari Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to make this accessible. Because the truth is that Lord Hari and pure devotional service is accessible through this literature. Those who have made an effort to study this literature seriously and regularly will be immediately able to appreciate this statement. Because one will very soon feel a very strong connection with the Lord when one connects with this transcendental literature. Connects through reading and through study, through a sincere. This is very, very, very amazing, very fortunate. So if we can develop taste for Harinam, for Srimad Bhagavad, and for Vaishnav Seva, then we will have a smooth sail. Of course, relatively smooth, because there is nothing like a perfect smooth sail, but a relatively smooth sail in our spiritual life. We can go full speed on the highway leading to the spiritual path. So today we are discussing the 5th canto. In the 5th canto, we are discussing descendants of Priyavrat Maharaj. And this is chapter 4 that we are discussing. And we are discussing about the sons of Maharaj Nabhi. In the last class, we discussed how Maharaj Nabhi and his wife, what is his wife's name? Anybody remembers?
Meru Devi.
Meru Devi.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. And his wife Meru Devi. They performed a sacrifice with the help of Brahmanas, and how, through the grace of the Brahmanas, the Lord appeared, gave his blessings, and he was so keen to have a son like the Supreme Lord, and being pleased with the Brahmanas and also with the strong faith and devotion and affection of King Nabhi. The Lord gave the blessing that since there is nobody equal to or greater than me, and I cannot make the words of the Brahmanas come false, I propose that I only become your son. So this also shows the affectionate nature of the Lord towards his devotees. Yeah, the Lord could very well have said, if he was not inclined towards Nabhi, he said, sorry, this is an impossible prayer. Please ask for something else. There is nobody like me. He could have chosen that path if he wanted to. But the Lord, being very affectionate, he wanted to fulfill. And the Lord is actually very affectionate, because those who are sincerely approaching him with devotion, the Lord is very happy to receive their affection, and he is very hungry to receive his affection. And this is a very, very, very important and a very mystical quality of the Supreme Lord. That even though he is Atmaram, even though he is Aptakam, Atmaram means fully self-satisfied. Aptakam means whose desires are satisfied by himself without having to go out to satisfy anything. He is still Bhaktavatsal. He is still hungry to receive the love and affection of his devotees. Of course, in one sense, his devotees are not outside of him, because his devotees are his own Vibhinnamsha, there is own separated expansion. So it's not really that it's outside, but still, nonetheless. So the Lord becomes very keen. The unlimited Lord is still eager even for a small, insignificant jiva out of the zillions and quadrillions of jivas. Even if one has a little desire, the Lord becomes eager to receive it. This is such an amazing thing. It's so inconceivable for us. Right? It's like uh, like a Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and the Adanis and of the world. Somebody wants to give them 1 rupee. Say, here, please come. I have one, but I cannot come to you. Please. Do you think they would bother? But Krishna will bother. If you are really sincere to give him. Lord Ram made sure he came to Shabri's ashram because she was waiting for years and years. Because her guru had said, just continue. Because you have served me so nicely, just continue your devotional service. One day, Lord Ram will come here. Faith in the words of Hari. So that is our great hope. This quality of the Lord, that he is extremely affectionate to his devotees, is actually such a wonderful quality. And this is very, very hard for those who are not devotees to understand and appreciate. Because some of these things about the transcendental nature of the Lord are so hard from a logical perspective to appreciate. Only those who have a direct experience of these qualities of the Lord through the practice of devotional service under the guidance of devotees develop a direct experiential conviction. So based on their words, we should have that faith. And we don't even have to wait until we become great, pure devotees. Even at the stage of sadhana, we can experience this love and affection of the Lord. And many, many devotees have. So the Lord very affectionately decided to appear because the Lord is not a demigod. The Lord cannot be forced by yajna to give something that he doesn't want to give. He cannot be arm twisted. So, as devotees, we should be very careful. We cannot try to arm twist Krishna through psychological blackmail or through, whatever else. Sometimes we conjure up various ways to try to force Krishna to give what we want. And we all do it at different points in our life. But actually, the process is very simple. If we approach the Lord feelingly and genuinely and humbly present ourselves, the Lord will always reciprocate with our prayers in a way that is good for us. May not be the way we may necessarily want it. And that's our problem. Anyway, so the Lord decided to appear, and we discussed about the appearance of the Lord in the last class. So this chapter discusses the transcendental characteristics of Rishabhdev, the Supreme Personality of God. It's a very small chapter, 19 verses only, but it's also very sweet. It's sweet because it speaks about the name, form, qualities, and pastimes. Not so much the pastime, but at least the name, form, qualities of the Lord. The detailed pastimes and instructions of Lord Rishabhdev are in the next chapter, especially his instructions. But an overview of his characteristics and his life is given in this chapter. So Shukdev Goswami is explaining this, and he says that after the Lord appeared to Meru Devi and Nabhi, it was very apparent to King Nabhi and to Mary Devi that this personality, their son, indeed displayed the characteristics of a transcendental personality, actually that of the Supreme Person. First thing is that they could see on the bottoms of his feet the transcendental marks of Lord Hari. We have discussed this a few times, so I'm not going to go into detail. But incarnations of the Lord will have certain marks on their feet. So if anybody is claiming to be an incarnation of the Lord, this is one thing you can do, check their footprints. Please show me where is the thunderbolt, There is the flag, Shankar Chakra. There are specific marks, and there is a detailed description of how these marks are placed, where they are placed, what is their meaning. So you cannot cheat. And it is said this son of theirs was extremely peaceful. He was equal to all. He was never after anything material. So he was displaying all the transcendental qualities of fully being satisfied, being equal, samadarshi, perfect control of mind and senses, displaying all opulences, extreme intelligence, detachment, extreme beauty, Shadaishwarya Sampurna, and also extremely renounced. Renouncement is not hankering after material enjoyment. So as the child was growing, his opulence and his influence was growing day after day. And as the brahmanas and the residents of the the city started observing how powerful, how qualified, how influential this boy was, the stronger their desire started becoming that this person must be our ruler. It's like Lord Ram, right? Even though he was very young, everybody wanted Ram to be the king, to the point that, Gaurav Prabhu was telling once in one class that the news from Sumantra went to Dashrath. And Dashrath, in one sense, he felt, he said that they all want Ram, but Ram was very young. So Dashrath was feeling, oh, my citizens are eager when this Dashrath will go away and when Ram will become, is there some problem with me? So Sumantra said, no. You are a wonderful ruler. The problem is not with you, but the problem is that Ram is so superlative in his qualities. And no matter how much any one of us is qualified, there is no match. It's not even on the scale. Who can match the Supreme Personality of God? So like that, everyone was wondering, oh, when will Rishabhdev be appointed as the ruler of the earth? So when the boy grew up and he started mixing with, he started interacting with the people and the community, everybody could see all the wonderful qualities he had. It is said he was extremely beautiful, a very well-built body. And like we discussed, with all the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of God, great strength, beauty, name, fame, influence, enthusiasm. And Nabi was also convinced it is very true. He is indeed so qualified. In fact, Nabi felt he is the best of the human beings. And that is why he gave him the name Rishabh. Rishabh means he who is the best. For example, even in Bhagavad Gita, at certain times, Krishna addresses Arjuna as Bharata Rishabha. Means Bharata Rishabha, the best amongst the Bharatas. And this Bharat is actually the son of Rishabhdev. We'll come to that. But Rishabha means the best. Rishabh also technically also means bull. Literally also means bull. But here it means Bharat, the best among men. The topmost among men. And that is why this name Rishabh is very apt. So when he became famous, when somebody becomes very famous on earth and extremely opulent and powerful, there's one personality who starts becoming a little bit concerned and envious. Can you guess?
Indra.
Indra. Yes, Mr. Indra. All respects to him. He started becoming a bit. And this is one disease that living entities have, envy. Conditioned living entities have, which is envy. Which is that even if we are wonderful devotees, we are all very nice until we feel our position is threatened. As soon as we start feeling that this person is threatening my position, my influence, then our whole attitude towards that person, even if that person is a devotee or a great devotee, changes significantly. Until that point, we are very wonderful. Let me serve you, Prabhu, this, that. But when their influence starts countering ours, when we see them as competition to us, we see that, oh, his influence will surpass us, we become worried. So Indra becomes worried. So there is this Indra tendency in all of us, even though we are not opulent like Indra. This Indra tendency, this tendency to be glorified. And this is the root cause of our material condition. Anyway, so Indra became so envious because of his opulence. So Indra decided to do something interesting because he's controller of rain, right? So let me do this. His kingdom is running so wonderfully. Let me do this. I'll switch off the tap for him. Like sometimes when you want to trouble somebody, you are a government official. What you'll do, you'll switch off his electricity, you'll switch off his water, you'll get a police raid in his house, income tax raid, put some cases on him. Correct? I mean, this is happening in today's politics also. Indra said, just turn off his water supply. Powerful guy is it. And Indra. So you see, even devatas abuse their power. That is the problem with material conditioning. Sometimes they forget that they are representatives of the Supreme Lord. And Indra forgot again. I don't know again or not, because Krishna's pastime happened much later. This happened much earlier. But Indra keeps forgetting whom he's dealing with. Forgot that Rishabhdev is the incarnation Supreme Personality of God. He forgot that he is water department minister and the king's water supply is turning off. He's only appointed by the king. The power that he has to supply water, who is given him? Krishna says, Mayaiva Vihita Nitan. He says, Devatas are not giving, I am giving through the Devatas all the blessings. So when Rishabhdev understood, oh, Rishabhdev is acting a bit smart. So he didn't bother about Indra. He didn't try to propitiate Indra or give or this, that. What he did is the Lord doesn't depend on Indra for rainfall. The Lord used his own Yog Maya potency to cause rainfall to happen. Where there was wonderful rains and everything is going on, and Indra is like, I thought I was controlling the water. And then Indra became humble. And then he realized he is indeed Rishabha, the best amongst men. So he recognized the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of Rishabhdev. And perhaps as a reconciliatory measure, he offered his daughter Jayanti in marriage to Lord Rishabhdev. And the Lord is not, you did like this, now I'll teach you a lesson. The Lord is not, he doesn't have this kind of mentality like what we have. The Lord is just enough punishment to make his devotees realize their mistake. The Lord is not interested in making others miserable. He is the Father of all living entities. So the Lord, understanding that Indra got bewildered a bit, he forgave him and he accepted the daughter of Indra by the name of Jayanti. So in that way, actually, Indra, Rishabhdev and Jayanti got married. They were a very, very wonderful couple. Of course, King Nabhi was extremely, affectionate to his son, and he was even though he knew that he's the supreme person. The thing is, when the Lord becomes your son, even though he's the Lord, you also consider him as the son, and you're very, very affectionate. It is said in the Bhagavad that the Lord, when he incarnates in roles like this, he still behaves like an ordinary human being. And he maintains the maryada of these relationships and behaves like that role. So this mentality, of course, the scriptures say that it is possible through the Yog Maya potency, and the Lord enjoys. Even though he's the Supreme Father, he enjoys being treated as the son by his own devotees. So he accepted, and with great transcendental affection, Nabhi would shower him with lot of love. We cannot imagine what kind of transcendental pleasure is there to have the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a son. Of course, we are not so advanced that we will ever become like Yashoda or Vasudev or these transcendental personalities because they're eternal positions. But if we want to develop that kind of a mood, yes, we can be an assistant in the spiritual world to Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, and others. In that way, we can experience a similar parental mood, even though we may not directly become the parents of the Lord. But that parental feeling we can experience, and we can see how, and we can also experience Krishna treating us as a parent. So it's not that we are bereft of that kind of emotion. We can, but following in the footsteps of these great Brajbasis. So, as we discussed, as Rishabhdev was getting more and more popular, and the demand, we want Rishabhdev, everybody was excited that they wanted him to be the king. So Maharaj Nabi was actually very happy. As I have mentioned many times, the kings in ancient times were very happy when their children, they would see that they are old enough to become kings. Because what? They can give the kingdom and they can retire, because they are always fixed. Oh, the goal of my life is to absorb myself fully in devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So they enthroned Maharaj Rishabhdev as the emperor of the world, and to teach the people the proper following of Varnashram Dharma, because that was one of the main things which Rishabhdev actually instructed the world. They entrusted King Rishabh in the hands of learned Brahmanas, because that was the culture. The kings in those days would not just rule independently, they would be guided by very learned Brahmanas. Then Maharaj Nabi and his wife Meru Devi, they decided to retire. They went to Badrikashram, it is said, Badrinath. Went into the Himalayas, where they dedicated their life to spiritual cultivation by engaging themselves very expertly in austerities and penances. With great happiness, not frustration. Oh, leave the kingdom, leave the palace, why we have to do all this? No, very happy. So this kind of happiness to renounce comes if one has actually genuinely cultivated strong spiritual values and spiritual practices throughout one's life. Sometimes people think that, oh, when I'll become old, I'll become spiritual. No, sorry. Old age doesn't bring spirituality by itself as an automatic product. One has to cultivate Kaumaram Acharet Pragya Dharman Bhagavadan. From now itself, when his friends say we are too young, he says, no, not too young. Sorry, wrong argument. From now, if you are trained nicely as a brahmachari, you can lead grihastha life in an exemplary way by not getting entangled. Then when the right time comes, you will have the right understanding and the spiritual strength to take the next step of renunciation. So Maharaj Nabi and Meru Devi in perfect samadhi, they worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Naranarayan Rishi in Badrinath, because that's the main deity there. Many of you have gone to Badrinath, we have gone together. It's such a wonderful transcendental place. And in due course of time, Nabi Maharaj was elevated to the spiritual world of Vaikuntha. So he attained spiritual perfection. So he eventually, even though he started with a kind of a material desire, but he had affection for the Lord reciprocated, he got the Lord as a son, he became eventually free from all material desires, whatever little tinge was left, and he attained supreme perfection. So the Bhagavatam says that there are a couple of verses which describe the glories of Maharaj Nabi, because Maharaj Nabi is so fortunate. So the Bhagavatam says, who can attain the fortune of the kind of perfection that Nabi Maharaj got? And that kind of activities, that kind of fortune. Because of his devotional service, the Supreme Lord became his son. You can measure that kind of good fortune. And in another verse, he's glorified that who is a better worshipper of Brahmanas than Maharaj Nabi. Why? That Maharaj Nabi worshipped the Brahmins so nicely and pleased them so nicely that they intervened on his behalf, pleased the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and got the Supreme Lord to appear in front of him. This is also a very wonderful point, isn't it? What he could not have accomplished, he is the devotees. And in this case, these Brahmanas are not just ordinary Brahmanas like we discussed the last time, they are actually devotees. They intervened on his behalf. They called on, and that's why you see the initial conversation was between the Lord and the Brahmins. And Nabi and Merudevi were, witnessing the conversation because the great Brahmana devotees, we need Guru, we need the seniors to intervene and plead on our behalf. So how fortunate he is that he worshipped the devotees so nicely that the devotees brought the Lord in front of him so that he could see Narayana in person. How greatly fortunate, how greatly. So Rishabhdev took the kingdom after Maharaj Nabi had departed. And he understood, now this is my duty to perform. It is said one of the very important ways in which Rishabhdev as an incarnation instructed the world is Rishabhdev took upon himself as the task of instructing the people in general how to conduct their life by perfectly following Varnashram Dharma. So he displayed all the 4 stages, and I mentioned this briefly earlier. First, he became a perfect brahmachari. Even though he doesn't need to be a brahmachari because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He joined the ashram. He went to Gurukula. He learned under his Gurukula, under his teachers. Very soon he learned everything. He gave his Guru Dakshina. He led the life of a perfect brahmachari. After his education was finished and after giving Guru Dakshina, with the blessings of his spiritual master, he accepted Jayanti as his wife and became a Grahastha. And then he had 100 sons from Jayanti. And all these sons were extraordinarily qualified. So a Grahastha who is very successful is one who not only leads a wonderful spiritual and dharmic life himself, inspiring, practicing and preaching to others, but who also produces progeny who also become very wonderful, exemplary, dharmic devotees. So it is said Rishabhdev had 100 sons and they were all as powerful and as qualified as he himself. So even as Grahasthas, because Grahasthas are expected to follow a lot of ritualistic ceremonies, so whatever duties are expected from Grahasthas, Rishabhdev performed together with his wife Merudevi, so many yajnas. It is said all the yajnas that they were supposed to perform as Grahasthas, whatever was expected in those ages according to the Varnashram system, each of them he performed at least 100 times. So he, set a very, very wonderful example of following the ritualistic duty. So those who are within the Varnashram system are expected to follow these rules and regulations. Of course, in the current time, Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas say that, Karma Kanda is not so necessary, but if we simply take shelter of the Sankirtana Yajna, the Yajna of chanting the holy names, and if we worship the Lord at home, then, we will achieve the same result as performance of all the yajnas. Yajnanam japa yajñosmi, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, of all the yajnas and the chanting of the holy names. So out of the 100 sons, now we'll discuss a little bit about the sons. So before that, I'll just complete the point, even though the verse doesn't mention here, but Rishabhdev performed ideal brahmachari, then ideal grahastha eventually, and we will discuss this in the later chapters, it's not mentioned here. Later, when the right time came, he gave the kingdom to his eldest son Bharat, whom we will discuss shortly, retired to the forest. then he displayed the varnash, the vanaprastha and the sannyas, the supreme Paramhamsa Avadhuta example. So very, very instructive. So that was one of the. See, one should, a great personality, the ideal teacher, not just instructs, but he lives his instruction. He lives his instruction. Krishna came and he spoke the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, in one sense, Krishna lived the Bhagavad Gita, but the way Krishna lived it, it is not possible for the common man to appreciate and understand. So they say, oh, he's speaking this, but he's dancing with the gopis. Because they will see it from a very material perspective. That is why the Lord came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to display his pastimes in a way that the common people can relate to and emulate. Not copy, but follow in that footsteps. Anyway, so Bharat Maharaj was the eldest son of King Rishabhdev. He was a very, very great exalted devotee. There are many chapters, the subsequent ones, where we will discuss about his glories over 3-4 chapters. The 3 lives of Bharat Maharaj is discussed, and like what we mentioned, this planet has become known as Bharatvarsha in his honor. So, must be a very, 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 very special, extraordinary person. It was very, very great. After Bharat in age, because Bharat was the eldest, there were 99 other sons, out of which 9 eldest, means, the number 2 to number 10. Their names were Ushavarta, Ilavarta, Brahmavarta, Malaya, Ketu, Bhadrasena, Indrasprik, Vidarbha, and Kikata. And all these became also great rulers, and the kingdom that he had was also divided amongst them. All this we'll discuss later. Out of the 100 sons, there were another 9 sons who were very special. So these the 9 that we just discussed, other than Bharat, they all became very, very great kings. Then the 9 that I'm going to just now mention, they became very, very great sages. What were their names? Kavi, Havi, Antariksha, Prabuddha, Pippalayana, Avirhotra, Drumila, Chamasa, and Karabhajana. These are all great munis, great rishis. Later, we'll discuss about their teachings in the subsequent cantos, because there is a whole section. Shukdev Goswami tells actually this to Parikshit Maharaj that later I will discuss the characteristics and the message of these 9 great sages, the Navayogendras. When we will come to the discussion between Narada and Vasudev. Narada and Vasudev had a conversation in that this whole teachings of the Navayogendras come. I will explain it to you then. But for now, you just understand that these are very great, exalted devotees. Even though they were born to a king, normally you would expect all of them to be Kshatriyas, but they became Paramhansa Brahmans. They didn't just become ritualistic Brahmins, they became sannyasis and sages. And they became very glorious because of their very strong devotion to Lord Hari Vasudev, the Supreme Lord. So these 19 have been mentioned. Bharat Maharaj and the other 9 kings, 10 of them, plus these 9 Navayogendras, which are 19. And how many are left? 81. So the remaining 81 sons, the younger ones, which are of course children of Jayanti and Rishabhdev, according to the instructions of their father, they were also very, very cultured, very well behaved, very pure. They were also expert in Vedic matters. And they were very learned in the performance of Vedic rituals. And very interestingly, they all had Brahmanical tendency. They all became Brahmanas who were expert in ritualistic performance. So based on their nature, based on their qualification, based on their propensity, Guna Karma Vibhagashaha, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvarnam Maya Srishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. That I have created the 4 Varnas and the 4 Ashramas, the soul system. Not based on birth, but based on qualities and activities. So here you see, Kshatriya father, 10 of the sons became Kshatriyas, 9 became Paramhamsa sannyasis, 81 became Brahmanas. Sometimes some people claim, oh, the caste system is, based on birth and this and that. Here, Bhagavatam is giving an example. The sons of a Kshatriya king, 81 of them became Brahman. So it's very clear. For Shastras, there are many examples, not just these, there are many examples. Vishwamitra is an example who was born as a Kshatriya, but later on through qualification and training became a great Brahmana sage. Brahma Rishi. So like that, all of them were qualified and wonderful, but according to their nature, their propensities, even though all were wonderful, they occupied different positions and they served society according to their guna and karma. So the Lord, with this whole setup, assisted by his sons, ruled the kingdom very, very wonderfully. Of course, the Lord's form, it is said whenever the Lord appears, he doesn't accept a material body. The Lord's form is transcendental. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that, whenever I descend in this world, Sambhavami Atma Mayaya, I appear by taking shelter of my own internal potency. The Lord doesn't take a material body. His body is beyond the miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death. And the Lord is not attracted to the modes. That's why he's never materially attached. He's always perfect. But the Lord is always compassionate, and that is why even Lord Rishabhdev, he was very, very sensitive to make sure that all his praja is happy. He would be unhappy if he would see even one person unhappy. Of course, at an external level, even though he's the Lord, he would behave as if he was an ordinary person. He would act in relationships like that. He set the perfect example of all varnashram duties. And because by that time, the situation was such, even though much details are not mentioned, that varnashram duties were not being followed properly, the Lord exemplified the followance of the proper varnashram duties through his own example, so that the general populace will properly be able to pursue the goals of life, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, and moksha and bhakti beyond. So the Lord said that very, very wonderful example, because whatever great persons do, common men follow, isn't it? Yadyad achariti shrishtas tattadevetaro jana. That's what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. And a similar verse is there in this particular chapter. And that verse is Yadyad shirasanya acharitam tattat anuvartate lokaha. Whatever Shirasanya means the leaders of society. Acharitam. Tattat anuvartante lokaha. That is what common people will follow. So this is a very important principle, and that is why the Lord wanted to make sure, because he is known as Rishabha, the best. And everybody will look at the best and want to emulate him. That's why it's very important who we make our heroes. If we make just singers, dancers, Bollywood stars or heroes, then it is not that if they are also displaying all other wonderful qualities, good. Otherwise, it is it can be dangerous, because one will be subtly influenced, follow the example of whom they consider as. So, of course, even though he is the Lord is actually beyond the varnashram system, right? The Lord is transcendent. He is the creator of the varnashram system. But the Lord ensured that because he was setting the example, and he was setting the example as an ideal king, he perfectly performed all Kshatriya duties. And as part of the Kshatriya duties, it is the duty of the Kshatriya to worship the Brahmanas and follow their guidance. So, as Rishabhdev, and the Lord has displayed this in all incarnations, isn't it? whether it is Ramchandra, whether it is Krishna Chandra, whichever form the Lord has appeared as a great Kshatriya king, the Lord has always given due respect to the Brahmanas, and in that way encouraged the common people to follow that example. So in this way, the Lord set a perfect example. He was a Kshatriya guided by Brahmanas, and as a Kshatriya, it was his duty to create welfare for the entire state by properly directing the Vaishyas and the Shudras. So this is how the system works. The Kshatriya is the administrator, Brahmana is the thinker, he sets the vision, he gives the insight. The Kshatriyas are the doers who will organize and move things. But moving needs resources. Vaishyas produce the resources, and it also needs direct execution on the ground, building, whatever is needed. Those Shudras, those who are engaging in menial work of some sort. So we need labor and we need resources, correct, to execute projects. Correct. For a project, what do you need? You start to need with a clear vision, right? So Brahmanas give the vision. Then you need a project manager to drive the project. Kshatriya does that job. And then you need resources. And then you need resources, which is money, facilities, equipment, land, whatever else that the project needs. And then you need labor to execute the project. So Kshatriyas and Vaishyas perform that. That is how society becomes happy overall. So in this way, everything went on very wonderfully, and it was so nicely done. Everything was so nicely done. And we also discussed how Maharaj Rishabhdev also so wonderfully performed all the sacrifices, 100 times. It is said, not only did he perform them 100 times, but performed with proper consideration of using the most first-class ingredients, making sure in the proper holy places by the proper qualified priests who were very qualified and faithful, young, and that Lord Vishnu was worshipped. His prasad was distributed to the devatas, and Lord Vishnu was pleased. Because ultimately, yajna's success means that the yajna purush is satisfied. That is the definition of yajna success. Bhuktaram yajna tapasam sarvalokamaheshwaram. So the bhukta is Vishnu, is yajna purush. So very, very wonderful. And because of his perfect execution of everything, everything was going on so wonderfully in his kingdom. So his kingdom, just like Prithu Maharaj or Ram Rajya, Rishabhdev's kingdom is also said to be extraordinarily auspicious and wonderful. It is said that all the residents are so satisfied that they did not want anything. Everything was going on wonderfully. It is said the common man did not want to ask for anything at any times or by any means. They were fully satisfied. Everything was working. So this is the standard of success. So the chapter concludes by mentioning that as all of this was going on wonderfully, which means King Rishabh was ruling the kingdom with his 100 sons and everything was being done wonderfully. At one time, in the place known as the Brahmavarta, in Bharatvarsha, there was a great conference happening. So in those days also there was conference. Of course, conference doesn't mean you need a conference room. You need a projector. Conference means where learned people come together and discuss. In ancient India, they would come together and sit under a tree and discuss because they are not bothered too much about facilities. They would sit in nature under a big tree. The sages would gather and they would discuss. So there was a big conference. where great sages, learned Brahmanas had come. And apparently in that convention, all the king's sons had also come and participated because they were very eager to learn that assembly from the great Brahmanas. So it is said that Rishabhdev also reached that particular place. So that area is known as Brahmavarta. So the Vedas describe Brahmavarta as there are various. Brahmavarta is a part of India which is considered especially the area which was the center of Vedic culture. So somewhere it is said to the east of Saraswati River in those days, somewhere in the northern part of the current Indian nation. So that was the area that this conference was going on, and as this conference was going on, it is said Maharaj Rishabhdev also reached that particular conference, and in that conference, so in conference what we do, we present a conference paper. There is a presentation. So when Rishabhdev came there, he also gave a presentation, and his presentation was a special set of instructions for his 100 sons who had gathered there to hear from the sages. So apart from hearing from the sages, Rishabhdev also gave them advice on top. So he was probably the keynote speaker in the conference. So he comes there and he gives special instructions. And it is said all the denizens, even all the residents, this was not some private discussion behind closed doors. This was being discussed with all the residents also, the people also were there. So this was an open conversation, and Rishabhdev gave very, very wonderful instructions to his children. Were all very qualified, very well behaved, devoted, very, very wonderful. And the whole purpose of giving these instructions was so that they can rule, because they are going to inherit the kingdom eventually. So he instructed them so that they can rule the kingdom properly, and those instructions are considered very, very wonderful. And what were those instructions? Those instructions are described in the next chapter. So that conference paper is presented for us. It has been recorded because it was a public conversation. So all these details are known. So it's a very, very wonderful conversation. So we'll pick up from there. So in this way, to summarize, Rishabhdev not only lived an exemplary life, he lived a perfect life of a perfect personality. Because he is the perfect Supreme Personality, but he displayed those perfect qualities and behavior to set the right example. He set the right example through his behavior, and he also gave the perfect instructions. So in this way, Rishabhdev is a very, very special personality. Rishabhdev ki jai. So I'm going to stop here. This brings us to the end of this chapter. So I'm opening up the floor if there is any comments or any questions, and we'll continue the discussion of his instructions next Saturday. Suraj. Yes, Suraj, your hand is up. Suraj is the most enthusiastic.
No
Last questions. Yes.
Yeah, I have two questions.
He's like Parikshit Maharaj, but unfortunately there is no Shukdev Goswami here. But we will try to serve you in some capacity. Yes.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, I have two questions. This Bhagavatam, right? All these cantos, sequence, or they are as per category?
No, they are not chronological, no? So we discussed that in the beginning. Now, sequence means what? Sequence by what? When I say sequence,
By
sequence
past
by
times.
what? By pastimes means what? By chronology, by time?
By time.
No, so that's what we are saying. It is not by time.
Okay.
So the pastimes are not discussed by time. There is a particular conversation. The conversation is going in a particular way. There are discussions within discussions. And within those discussions, certain incarnations and personalities are being described. So Bhagavatam is not chronological, strictly. And
Yeah.
there may be some representation of chronology in certain parts of the Bhagavatam, but Bhagavatam is not designed in a chronological way.
Okay. Yeah. The main question, Prabhuji, I asked you, but I'm not able to recollect. Uh, uh, we have to read through all the 9 cantos to understand about Lord Sri Krishna. Right?
Yes.
So just one doubt I had asked, if you see across 9 cantos of Bhagavatam, even I had overview I have, all the incarnations appear as a Vishnu form, right, through the devotees. And from 9th chapter, 9th canto, it's Lord Sri Krishna. So is it that when there is an informal relation, so Krishna is concealing his identity as a Lord? If I know he is a supreme Lord, then I will not have that informal relation. So, I mean, for Vishnu, we always have a formal relation. So is that the matter, Prabhuji?
Yeah, with Vishnu we have a formal relationship, but I will put it like this. First thing is, it is not true that all are Vishnu incarnations, in the sense that there is so many appearances of Lord Narayan, which is true. There are descriptions of the Purusha avatars, which are the 3 Vishnus, because Vishnu and Narayan, even though they are 4-armed, they are different personalities. Vishnus are Purusha avatars, and Narayan is Vaikuntha Murti. So it's technically different. But there are so many other incarnations who are Leela avatars. Varahadev, Narsimhadev, Sri Ramachandra, Maryada Purushottam. Ramchandra's position is higher than, in terms of the manifestation of godhood and qualities and potencies, higher than that of Lord Narayan. So that is all discussed before the 10th canto. So the logic, and Prabhupada explains this many times across the Bhagavatam in the purports. If we carefully study, Prabhupada mentions this again and again. Prabhupada says that if we discuss Krishna Leela, where there is intimate interaction with the Lord, without properly understanding and appreciating who this Krishna is as the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we may take it cheaply. So before we understand the sweetness of God, we must understand the greatness of God. Who is this boy who is crying in front of Yashoda? Because just a boy who is crying in front of his mother, is that a big deal? We'll say, oh, my neighborhood boy also is crying in front of his mother, and his mother is also chasing him with a stick. But that is not a subject matter where Brahma and Shiva come from, in this watching from the sky. When we were running away from our father chasing us with a stick or with a belt or, with whatever our parents have been chasing us, no devatas are coming to watch, because that is expected. But who is this boy who's being chased? He who is feared by fear personified. So the point is, one has to understand properly the greatness of God, how great God is. Prabhupada emphasizes this again and again. So when we discuss the first 9 chapters, systematically the Bhagavatam develops the topic. And that is why of understanding the greatness of God, and that is why God's greatness starts with Sarga and Visarga. Creation, primary and secondary. When we understand creation and the magnitude of the creation and what is involved, this personality, is just breathing out, and universes are coming, and in each of those billions of universes, there's one Brahma popping up from the navel of one Purusha avatar. You understand? Once we go through that, we understand the transcendental form, qualities, personality, all these personalities, then we say, oh, and that person has become this boy. This boy, just playing around, running around, looking as if he's lost. He's that person whom even Mahavishnu wants to take darshan. You understand? Then we will be, because we are not at the level of spontaneous attraction. The residents of Vraja, very advanced devotees, by Yog Maya, the knowledge of the Lord's opulence is covered. For us, nothing needs to be covered in terms of knowledge, because we have no knowledge. So we are in ignorance. So first we have to develop and understand. Otherwise, we'll treat the Lord cheaply. And this is what happens with a lot of mundane scholars. They have no understanding of the real glory of God, and that's why they talk cheaply about Krishna. They try to advise Krishna. They try to become God's counselor. Krishna, actually is quite okay, but we discussed it. I discussed with my friend. We find out actually Krishna shouldn't have done this. If he had done this way, it would have been so nice, This kind of foolishness, conditioned souls display. And then they write poetry, they write books, and they write commentaries. So this is nonsense. This is aparad. This is absolute foolishness. So once we understand who is this, then there becomes no question of challenging and analyzing from a mundane perspective the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Atha Shri Krishna Namadina Bhaved Grahyam Indriyahi Sevonmukhehi Shivvadau Swayam Eva Spuratyadaha. That the transcendental name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be understood by the material senses and the mind and the material intelligence. When we serve him with love and devotion, beginning with the tongue, by chanting his holy names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. The Lord being pleased with us reveals the right understanding in our heart. Then it can be perceived. So this is the process. So that's why Prabhupada is very insistent that we try to develop the subject matter slowly. And that's why we should avoid jumping. Of course, this doesn't mean that we cannot hear any Krishna Leela. If we are hearing in the association of devotees Krishna's pastimes, then the devotees will make sure they explain in a way so that we don't misunderstand. But we don't try to jump to the verses, especially of the Ras Leela, because that's what people find most exciting. Why? First of all, because they are influenced by lust. And second, they want to say, if God did it, I can also do it. He did like this. Why blame me? So because again, yad yad acharati shreshtas. That's why the Bhagavatam also warns that the great soul should be, we should not do their anukaran, we should do their anusaran. Anukaran means imitation. Anusaran means following in the footsteps. For example, Prabhupada gives this example oftentimes. He says, people want to imitate Lord Shiva. They say, oh, Lord Shiva takes ganja. Say, I will also smoke ganja. Oh, really? You want to imitate? Then you imitate Lord Shiva in all ways. Lord Shiva drank halahal and captured it here in his throat. And he became Nilakanta. Come, I'll give you some poison. Forget halahal. Just take a little bit of cyanide and you store it here. Let's do that. And then you can take ganja. So you cannot imitate the great souls. Can you lift Govardhan? Prabhupada said, oh, you want to do Rastri? Why don't you try lifting Govardhan here? So that is why this subject matter has to be understood properly. So all this understanding and the basic fundamentals that we need, the framework of spiritual knowledge, we'll understand when we gradually progress. Does it make sense? Suresh provided, no, sorry for the rather long answer.
No, I understood. And concealing his identity for devotees to serve him. So what is the reason behind it, probably?
Concealing his identity.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if his greatness becomes overwhelming as the Supreme Person, the devotee will not be able to express his affection based on the loving relationship, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, if in my heart, the thought that this is God is very prominent, then how will I treat him as my son? But Lord doesn't want, the Lord is enjoying more when the devotee is treating him as a son than when he's treating him as oh God. We discussed that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, if you remember. Lord says, I love that more. Pure affection. That is known as pure spiritual affection. Not just a sentimental treating the Lord as an ordinary person. There is not that kind of a thing. This is very pure spiritual rasa. Very great, deep. And we cannot imitate all this. That's why we should never try to act like that. We should always try to be servants of the Lord. None of us should try to act like that. Eventually, when we become purified, whatever our innate spiritual nature of that mood will automatically come. Swayam eva spuratyada. We don't have to act. We should not act. What do I like? Oh, I like to play with Krishna. What do I like? Oh, I want to be. I mean, we can think I want to be, but we should not. We should not try to act. That is not a sadhana that we should do at our level. Those things come at a later level. So, yes, that covering happens through the Yoga Maya energy at very, very advanced levels. And that advanced level is beyond the point of liberation, beyond mukti. So when pure devotion comes beyond mukti, when we have a particular rasa, the Lord arranges for the Yoga Maya in such a way that that relationship can be manifested properly. Okay, whatever that relationship is. And the basis of that is that the love of that relationship covers over the knowledge of the godhood of God. For example, I'll tell you a very simple thing. You have seen so many videos of our Prime Minister Narendra Modi meeting his mother.
Yes, sir.
Correct? Okay. You have seen him how she's affectionately, touching his head, touching, his cheeks, feeding him, he's feeding her. Now, for her, does she know that her son is the Prime Minister?
I don't think.
She knows. Of course, she knows.
Yeah, I mean.
But
yeah,
that is secondary for her. Her affection for the son, as this is my son, is a more primary relationship for her. And it is only a secondary thing. Oh, my son also happens to be the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
You understand? She has not forgotten that he's Prime Minister, but that is the Prime Minister is secondary. For us, his Prime Minister is primary. We don't have any other relationship. You understand? Unless he becomes your friend. Then you may, as a friend, if he allows you, you may have a more closer relationship where it comes to the point that his being Prime Minister is secondary. You understand?
Yeah.
Okay, something like that.
Yeah, it is clear. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment or question? Yes, Tarun, Hare Krishna. Happy to see you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. It's not perfect, but I can make out what you're saying. Go ahead.
Yeah. Prabhuji, first of all, thank you very much for sharing the details about Rishabhdev ji. Actually, I was born in the Jain family, and in the Jain family, Rishabhdev ji ki puja bahut hoti hai in general. So I used to go in the temple, and after that, I used to go to Krishna temple. So people used to say me, why you're going to Krishna temple? Why you're not doing the Jain temple worship? So today I was able to understand the origin. That is very much important. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah, I'll just quickly mention one point before you go ahead. We discussed this in the last class that, what you mentioned is correct. The Rishabhdev that the Jains worship is this personality, Rishabhdev. And later when we discuss about the further pastimes of Rishabhdev later in this canto, we will discuss about his avadhuta nature and his intense austerities.
Okay.
So this whole Jain cult has come inspired by his intense austerities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that is why that path is taking that particular aspect of Rishabhdev and focusing on that aspect.
Okay.
So what we as Bhagavata followers say is, yeah, that is fine, but don't only take that part, take the holistic teachings of
Absolutely.
Rishabhdev. That's our point.
Got it. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, you had something else?
Yeah, one last point I have, sir. Actually, I put the one question you asked to. You basically put it ask in the class, and that was very basic question actually, and that was means
You have to do pest control in your house.
and it killed a lot of things, and it killed a lot of pests actually. So I was thinking I'm doing internal feeling they are getting killed without they have any they have to do anything, but I'm cleaning it and I'm killing it a lot of them. So is it a sin which I'm committing to?
What do you think?
I didn't understand. Sorry.
No, I said, what do you think? What do you think? What is your understanding? Is it sin or is it not sin? I'll answer it,
Is
but I'm
it?
just asking
It
you.
is. I believe it is.
So you see, this material world, no, is very complicated, and that's why dharma is not so easy. So the material world, even when we try to do good, there is a mixture of bad. And that is why the Shastras give an example. I'm not talking very directly about pest control, but probably it may come in one of these activities. The Shastras say that there are 6 activities which a Grihastha performs, where invariably one has to do, one commits hinsa or violence by killing other living entities. And that is sin. So I don't know whether I'll remember all the 6 activities, but I'll try to recollect whatever is I know, but others can add if they remember. So it is said, when a person cooks, when a person lights a fire, because cooking means one has to cut vegetables, trees, also farming, right? You're plucking out
Yes.
the crops,
True.
certain crops. Cooking, you light a fire. Whenever you light a fire, the heat is killing so many living entities around.
That's true.
When you are washing and cleaning a place, cleaning a place. So you are saying
Yes.
cleaning, whether you
Yes.
are doing a pest control or even a normal mopping with phenol. Why?
True.
What is the purpose of phenol? Purpose of
See,
phenol is to disinfect and kill all the bacteria.
true. True.
So cleaning, cooking, washing, breathing, and walking, 6 items. Breathing also, microbes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and walking also, because you are
It
stepping
may
on. You
kill.
don't know, right? When you go out, also you are walking so many. Are you always careful not to step on living? So many are getting. So the
True.
point is, can all these activities be stopped?
No.
Cannot, right? Yeah. So the principle. So basically, what the scripture says. Now I'll leave you with the principle, because the detailed application is a very case by case thing. So we are not going to go into
Makes
that.
sense.
But the principle is that, first principle is, it is not possible to do 100% white activity in this material world, because all activities also have a fault.
True.
Even breathing, even eating, have a fault. But having said that, this doesn't mean one whimsically does any activity. Oh, because anyway there is some. One has to try to minimize violence as far as possible in all activities. And simultaneously, for whatever have been inadvertently performed, the scriptures say that when we perform the proper yajnas according to our varnashram duties properly, and in those yajnas there are various ways by which one compensates for these inadvertent sins. Then
Okay.
one counteracts those inadvertent. So it is not that you don't get reaction, you get, but the system has a way to counteract it by balancing it.
Got it.
Yeah. Of course, for us as devotees, if we devote ourselves to devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, eventually all these kind of karmas which we may gather, uh, even though we don't do deliberately, which we gather through simply living life, we will be able to counteract by burning them through the process of devotional service, especially the chanting of the holy names. So what we have to be careful of is that in our day-to-day life, while some things may be unavoidable, we have to try to live our life in such a way that the violence is minimized.
Got it.
So some simple things we can do, can we do in some way that we can minimize the influence of pests in our house, that we can avoid and take precautions that there is minimum impact, so that we are not inadvertently forced, to be violent. So all these thoughts, should come. I'll give you one example. and I just leave you with that. Srila Prabhupada's own father, he had a go down, and it is said what he would do is that many rats would come into the go down to eat the cloth.
True.
So one way one could do is put rat poison, correct? Then
Mhm.
kill the rats, or put the rat this thing, capture them and kill them. So he had a novel solution. What he would do is he would keep a container of some rice or some food or some sweet which the rats like to eat, and he would keep it separately in such a way that the rats will come, but they will not come and eat the cloth. They'll just go and eat that food that has been kept for them, so that he's also happy and the rats are also happy.
Mhm. Got
Understand?
it.
Understand? Huh? So I don't know all the solutions, so I cannot tell you here, but I'm just giving you one example. So we have to be intelligent to figure out in our situation and circumstances how we can minimize violence. And wherever violence is unavoidable, then yes, if it is done, then we have to face the consequence. That we have to be clear. We cannot say just because I'm devotee, I'll. But the point is, if we are devotees and we are following the chanting and we are sincerely doing it, then in due course, all these sins will be taken care of through the
Got it.
process of the execution of devotional service. But of course, the devotee never has that mentality that because I'm devotee, I can perform sinner. Then that becomes a dangerous thing.
Got it.
I hope that gives you some insight. Yeah. So the
Yes.
basic answer is yes, it is sinful. We have to minimize it. And the only way to overcome all these kind of inadvertent sins in the long run is by taking full shelter of Krishna through the process of chanting the holy name. That's why
Sure.
Krishna says, Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam braja aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksheshyam. Ma shuchaha. Do not worry, because if you understand the intricacies of dharma, a person will be worried. How can I ever get out of this? You know, because I breathe also, I'm committing sin. How do I get out of it? Cannot get out of it unless you take shelter of the Supreme Personality of God.
Yeah, now I understand the meaning of that shloka. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhuji. It
Thank you.
helps.
Thank you. Please
Thank you.
keep coming. Yeah.
Sure.
Any other point, or anybody wants to add their realizations of dealing with cockroaches and pests and mosquitoes? Okay. So if nothing else, we will conclude. So hope you all had a wonderful Nityananda Trayodashi celebration. And of course, the next big festival will be Gaur Purnima, which will be soon. So I'll see you all on Wednesday. We'll continue our Chaitanya Charitamrita discussion, and have a wonderful evening. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada ki Jai, Samaveta Gaura Bhakti.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Shri Devi ji, Sudhir Sundar
Hare
Prabhu,
Krishna,
Suni
Prabhuji.
ji,
Hare
thank
Krishna
you.
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, and thank you to all those who are turning on their videos and giving your darshan. I am obliged. And for those who cannot, for whatever reason, I understand. For those who will show themselves later, I will continue to appreciate. Thank you so much. Shridevi ji, thank you. Nice to see you.